The hangar bay of Kelvary Station was a vault of sighing metal and ambition, a cavern where starships slumbered in their berths like dormant giants. The light here was a sterile blue-white, humming from fluorescent strips, a light that bleached warmth from skin and made even the living look like memorial statues. It was in this cold cathedral that Brennan Holt wiped his hands on a rag that had surrendered its purpose long ago, the grease stains mapping a history of solved problems. At 27, his body bore the quiet narrative of his trade, the lean strength of a man who communed with heavy, stubborn things, his face not so much weathered as lived in, etched with the quiet acceptance of a soul who had seen the galaxy's sharp edges and learned not to flinch. He was fitting the final coupling on the Serentine diplomatic cruiser, a vessel of impossible grace and delicate politics, when the air changed. That coupling is seated wrong. The voice did not echo. It did not need to. It was a sound that seemed to stop the very dust motes in their tracks, a voice of winter and finality. He knew it. Everyone on Kelvary Station knew it, the way deep space knows the absolute cold of the void. Brennan did not turn. His hands, steady and sure, continued their inspection. With respect, Your Eminence, he said, his tone even, conversational almost. It's seated precisely to Serentine engineering specs, 3rd revision. The temperature plummeted, a psychological chill that had nothing to do with environmental systems. Around him, the scattered mechanics, human and Kelvary alike, became a study in sudden, urgent absence. Tools were gathered without clatter, footsteps retreated into the shadows of other vessels. Within 30 seconds, the expanse around the cruiser was deserted, a clearing made for a sovereign predator. Empress Valindra Soth-Khan of the Kelvary Dominion stepped into the edge of his vision, and her presence was a physical weight, a gravity well of regal fury. Her skin was the profound, lustrous purple of twilight just before it deepens into night, her hair a cascade of lavender silk. A crown of woven gold sat upon her brow, fracturing the hangar lights into fleeting, defiant rainbows. Her armor, ceremonial yet lethal, whispered of power with every minute shift. But it was her eyes that commanded the universe around her, the color of amethysts held to a flame, burning with an intensity that had cowed systems. "You dare to correct me?" she asked, the question a silken threat. "On my own station, regarding my own ship." Brennan turned. It was, perhaps, his first true mistake, or his first act of unconscious courage. He met her gaze, and he did not look away. He saw, for a fleeting instant, a flicker of something beyond the imperial glare, surprise, perhaps, that anything would meet it head-on. "Look at me again," Valindra enunciated, each word a polished stone dropped into a still pool, "and you're dead. Then I'd recommend finding another mechanic to finish your thrust converter repair, Your Eminence," Brennan replied, his voice still calm, a rock in her storm. "The previous 3 you assigned were too busy not looking at you to notice the microfractures in your secondary fuel line. You're about 800 clicks from a catastrophic engine failure." The silence that followed was total, a vacuum where sound went to die. It was the silence of a throne room before a verdict, a breath held by an entire world. Valindra's elegant, pointed ears, the hallmark of the Kelveri, twitched, a minute betrayal of her focus. It was the only sign that his words had pierced the imperial mantle. "You are lying," she stated, a decree against reality. "I am not." He pulled a data slate from his belt, its screen glowing with cold diagnostics. "Scans from this morning. The fractures are propagating. Standard serentine alloy can't handle the unique magnetic resonance your drives generate. An oversight, when your shipwrights licensed the design." She snatched the slate from him. Her fingers, long and elegant and the same deep purple as her skin, brushed against his oil-stained, calloused ones. The contrast was absurd. She studied the data, her beautiful face a mask of stone, but in the set of her jaw, Brennan saw the calculations clicking over. "Why was this not reported?" she asked, her voice lower now, dangerous in a different way. "Because everyone on this station is terrified of you, Your Eminence." He said it plainly, a simple statement of fact. "They would rather let you die in a silent, sudden flash than be executed for delivering bad news." He watched the emotions war behind her eyes. Anger, indignation, and beneath them, a dawning, terrible understanding. This was Valindra's prison, Brennan realized in that moment. She had built walls of fear so high and so thick that now they trapped her inside, surrounded by mirrors that reflected only what she wished to see. "You are not terrified of me," she observed, the fury receding, replaced by something akin to clinical curiosity. "I've been afraid of things that would make your imperial nightmares seem like nursery rhymes," Brennan said softly. "No offense intended. And yet you offer it so freely." She thrust the slate back at him. "Fix it. You have until tomorrow's departure for the Concordat negotiations. That's 14 hours. It's a 37-hour job, minimum. Then work faster." She turned, the movement a masterpiece of regal dismissal, her cape swirling in a practiced arc of finality. "Your Eminence," he called out. She halted, a statue in profile. "I can prep a loner shuttle. It won't be impressive. But it won't explode. A dead Kelveri Empress doesn't arrive at all." Slowly, she turned back. The anger was gone, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated shock, as if he had just spoken in a forgotten, sacred tongue. "Your concern for my welfare is noted. And suspicious. You are dismissed." Brennan simply nodded. "I'll have the shuttle prepped anyway. Just in case." He returned to the cruiser, listening to the sharp, lonely tap of her boots fade into the hum of the station. Only when she was truly gone did he let out a long, slow breath, his shoulders slumping a fraction. "You are a dead man," whispered Tovin, a Kelveri mechanic with gray-purple skin and eyes wide with horror, emerging from behind a cargo crate. "She will have you spaced before the day cycle ends." "Probably," Brennan agreed, picking up his torch. "But she'll need to find someone else to fix her ship first." Blank, _, blank. Valindra did not go to her war room or her strategy chambers. She went to her private quarters, a spacious suite of echoing elegance that felt more like a museum of her own life than a home. Dismissing her attendants with a slashing gesture, She stood alone before a vast viewport, the stars strewn like careless diamonds against the velvet black. The human mechanic's words reverberated in the silence. They would rather let you die. I've been afraid of things. He had looked at her. Not at the crown, not at the armor, not at the symbol of power. He had looked at her. And he had seen the truth. It was an intimacy more shocking than any physical touch she had known in a decade. Her reflection in the transparent steel was perfect, imperial, cold. 34 years old, ruler of the most powerful polity in this sector, architect of her own impregnable legend. And achingly, profoundly alone. No one had spoken to her like that since her mother died. Since the day the disruptor bolt had torn through the Empress's chest during a public address, and 12-year-old Valindra had been pulled, screaming, from her mother's side. The lesson had been seared into her soul. Vulnerability was death. Connection was a target. Love was a weapon others used against you. To survive, she had to become the storm, so vast and terrible that nothing could ever get close enough to hurt her again. She had succeeded, and now, a grease-stained human with death in his own eyes and a shocking lack of self-preservation had offered her a loner shuttle. Had called her fear-built prison by its name. Your Eminence. Her calm chimed. High Chancellor Morai inquires about the departure schedule. The Concordat awaits. Valindra straightened, the mask settling back into place. Inform the Chancellor that our departure is delayed by 1 day. Technical difficulties. A pause. Your Eminence, the Sarantines will see it as a slight. The Sarantine Federation has kept the Kelveri waiting for 6 centuries. They can manage 24 hours. Send the message. She severed the connection. Her fingers danced over a console, pulling up a file she had glanced at once and forgotten. Holt, Brennan. Human. Mechanic. Grade 3. It was sparse. A refugee from the collapsed Terran expansion, his homeworld a cinder, his people scattered. A drifter. 12 stations in 6 years. No fixed family. Skills. Exemplary. Notes. Competent. Quiet. No disciplinary record. Emergency contact. None. The word struck her with a peculiar force. None. A man who touched the vital hearts of starships, who kept entire stations running, who had nowhere to call and no one to call for. A ghost. Like her. The next station cycle, Brennan was deep inside the cruiser's engine housing, the world reduced to the scent of ozone and hot metal, the feel of precision tools in his palms. This was his language, this tactile grammar of cause and effect. Here, a problem could be understood, isolated, and solved. Here, there were no politics, no unspoken rules, just the clean, honest logic of physics. A shadow fell over his worklight. You were right about the shuttle. He didn't jump. He was learning her presence now. The slight pressure change, the specific quality of her silence. About it being the smarter choice, or about you changing your mind. Both. Empress Valindra stood at the edge of the maintenance pit, looking down at him. She was out of armor, wearing a simpler, though still exquisitely tailored, suit of deep violet. She looked younger, and wearier. I have delayed the negotiations. You have your 37 hours. Thank you, Your Eminence. He returned to his welding. She did not leave. He could feel her gaze on him, a tangible pressure. It was not the predatory stare of yesterday, but something more measured, more curious. You have a question, he stated, finally setting down the torch and looking up. You are infuriatingly observant. It's a job requirement. Miss a detail, and people die. Simpler than statecraft, I imagine. A faint, almost imperceptible smile might have touched her lips. Why? She asked, the word hanging in the oily air, are you not afraid of me? Brennan climbed out of the pit, wiping his hands slowly. He considered evasion, then discarded it. She deserved truth. It was all he had left to give, anyway. Permission to speak freely, Your Eminence. I suspect you will regardless. He nodded. 18 months ago, I was on Kepler's Hope. A mining colony of about 6,000. Good people. Families. His voice was calm, but a distance entered his eyes, a focus on some internal horizon. There was a critical failure. Coolant leak in the main reactor. Catastrophic radiation breach imminent. He saw her amethyst eyes fix on him, fully present. I was the only engineer with the certification. For that particular model, the leak was in a compartment that had already been flooded. Lethal dose in under 3 minutes. He took a slow breath. I went in, sealed the breach, saved the colony. You went in, she repeated, a statement of awe. I went in. He met her gaze. By the time I got out, my cellular structure was rewritten. The medics gave me 6 months. 8. With aggressive palliative care. The hum of the station seemed loud in the following silence. That was 18 months ago, Valindra whispered. Yes. You are dying. Everyone is dying, Your Eminence. He offered a small, weary smile. I just have a more definite appointment. So, when you ask why I'm not afraid of you, it's because I've already had my conversation with the void. Everything else is just a matter of degree. He saw it then. The shock in her eyes, quickly suppressed, but not before it had morphed into something else. Pain, recognition, a mirror of her own solitude, reflected in the stark terms of mortal calculus. There are treatments, she said, her voice oddly strained. Kelvary medical science is advanced. Cellular reconstruction, gene therapy. I've read the databases, he interrupted gently. The procedures that might work are for citizens of the Dominion. The waiting list for non-citizen exceptions is 7 years long. He shrugged, a gesture of finality. I don't have 7 years. I could, she began, then stopped herself abruptly, as if the words were a treasonous impulse. Her face closed off, the shutters slamming down. It is irrelevant. Continue your work. She left quickly, but the dramatic sweep of her cape was gone. This was just a retreat. That night, in the sanctum of her chambers, Valindra did not sleep. She accessed files, medical records, immigration logs, incident reports from a minor colony called Kepler's Hope. She saw the scans of his ravaged cells, the cold prognosis. She saw his application for non-citizen medical aid, stamped denied. And she saw something else. The colony manifest from Kepler's hope. The list of residents in the endangered sector during the leak. Sayre, Clara, Sayre, Marcus, Sayre, Thomas, Sayre, Sasha, Sayre, Penelope, a family, a mother, a father, 3 children. All evacuated safely. Because of him. Cross-referencing. Clara Sayre, née Holt. His sister. The pieces clicked into place with a sound that resonated in her hollow chest. He hadn't just saved a colony. He had saved his family. And then, with a quiet, devastating courage, he had walked away. He had chosen to spare them the long, painful goodbye, to let them remember him whole, to let his niece grow up with the memory of a promise-making uncle, not the reality of a man fading to nothing. He was not a ghost because he had no one. He was a ghost because he loved them too much to let them watch him die. Valindra pressed her forehead to the cool glass of the viewport. A single, hot tear traced a path down her purple cheek, the first in 12 years. She was weeping for the mechanic in the hangar, yes. But she was also weeping for the girl who had been pulled from her mother's body, for the woman who had built a fortress because she could not bear another loss. They were both architects of their own isolation, masters of a lonely craft. Blank, underscore, blank. The repair was finished in 34 hours. Brennan performed the final systems check himself, the familiar ritual bringing no satisfaction, only a dull fatigue that seeped into his bones. The pain was getting worse, more frequent. Tovin helped him tidy the tools. You are a miracle worker, Holt. You should be running a shipyard. Too much paperwork, Brennan grunted, leaning against the hull as a wave of dizziness passed. You should see the medic. I am the medic for this. He tapped his chest. Just tired. A junior attendant, trembling, approached. Mr. Holt, the Empress. She commands your presence. In the medical bay. Bewildered, Brennan followed. Had his work failed? Had she been injured? The doors to the pristine, sterile medical suite hissed open. Empress Valindra stood there, not as a patient, but as a sovereign in full regalia. Beside her was an elderly Kelvari female in the intricate robes of a master physician. Brennan Holt, Valindra said, her voice formal, but her eyes held his with an intensity that pinned him in place. This is luminary healer Serene Morsh, the foremost authority on radiative cellular trauma in the Dominion. Brennan stared, words failing him. The waiting list for non-citizen medical exceptions, Valindra continued, a slight, almost imperceptible tremor in her regal tone, has been reviewed. Your case has been expedited to the top. The luminary has agreed to treat you. The world tilted. Your Eminence. You can't. The protocols. I am the Empress, she said, and for the first time, the phrase sounded not like a threat, but a promise. I am the protocol. This is not a reward for a repaired fuel line. This is, she searched for the words, the human words that felt so alien on her tongue. This is a sovereign's acknowledgement that a life of courage and sacrifice has value to the Dominion. Will you accept? He looked from her fierce, vulnerable face to the healer's kind, waiting one. He thought of Clarara's laughter, of Penny's small hand in his, of all the sunrises he had already ridden off. A future, an unexpected future, shimmered like a mirage before him. Why? He asked again, the single word containing multitudes. Her composure wavered, the Empress faded, and just Valindra remained. Because you looked at me, she said, her voice barely a whisper. And you did not see a monster. You saw a person who was about to make a terrible mistake. No one has seen me in a very long time. I would not see you lost. Brennan Holt, who had faced a radioactive inferno and his own end without flinching, felt his eyes burn. He nodded, unable to speak. Good, she said, and the single word was warm. The choice, as ever, is yours. But I am learning that running away is a poorer strategy than I once believed. The treatment was an agony of rebirth. 6 weeks of pain that scoured him hollow, of cellular storms and neural fire. Through the haze, 2 things remained constant. The competent, gentle hands of luminary Morsh, and the occasional, silent presence of the Empress. She would come, always with a pretext, inspecting the facilities, reviewing station morale. The pretexts would evaporate within minutes, leaving them in quiet conversation that stretched for hours. She spoke of the crushing weight of the crown, of the loneliness of command, of the memory of her mother's smile. He spoke of the smell of soil from a world he could barely remember, of the terrifying, wonderful responsibility of holding a newborn niece, of the quiet satisfaction of a system purring to life under his hands. They were 2 refugees from different wars, finding a shared dialect in a language of loss and quiet hope. On the day Luminary Morsh declared the treatment a complete success, the radiation damage not just halted, but reversed, Brennan stood in the discharge room, feeling the strange, thrilling strength in his limbs. He had a lifetime before him now. A gift, a terrifying, beautiful blank page. Valindra came to him. She was dressed for the Concordat negotiations at last, a vision of imperial power, every inch the ruler of stars. What will you do now, Brennan Holt? She asked. I don't know, he admitted, the truth freeing. I had a plan for dying. I don't have one for living. You could stay. The words hung between them, simple and seismic. On the station, in the Dominion, she took a breath, her regal certainty faltering. Near me, I have need of an chief engineer for the royal fleet. One who is not afraid to tell the Empress when she is wrong. Just an engineer. She met his gaze, and the last of her walls crumbled. Her amethyst eyes were bright, uncertain, gloriously human. That depends, she said softly, on what you are willing to be. He crossed the space between them. He did not bow. He took her hand, his rough, scarred fingers intertwining with her elegant, purple ones. The touch was electric, a circuit completing. I spent 6 years running from life, he said. From anything that could make saying goodbye hurt. Then you threatened to kill me for looking at you. A genuine smile broke across his face. And somehow, that was the moment I started wanting to live again. Properly. It is a terrible foundation, she murmured, her thumb tracing the line of his knuckles. It's an honest one. The court will riot. My advisors will plot. There will be scandals, and protests, and endless, tedious drama. I know. And you? She asked, her voice barely a breath. What will you do? Valindra Soth-Khan, Empress of the Kelveri Dominion, smiled. It was a radiant, unguarded, breathtaking expression that transformed her utterly. I am going to let you look at me, she said, for as long as we both shall live. And if anyone objects, I shall remind them that I am the Empress, and I have excellent taste in engineers. He laughed, and she laughed with him, the sound bright and unburdened in the sterile room. And then, with the stars as their witness, they kissed, a mechanic and an empress, a human and a Kelveri, two lonely souls who had chosen, against all odds, to stop being ghosts. Blank, blank. The court's reaction was a symphony of outrage. Brennan, now the imperial consort and chief engineer, became a target for whispers, the upstart, the human distraction, and 3 genuinely pathetic assassination attempts. Valindra's response was swift, merciless, and politically elegant. The would-be conspirators found themselves governing very distant, very quiet asteroids. You didn't have to exile Count Vathras, Brennan remarked one evening, reading a dispatch. His poison taster was notoriously inept. Principal, Valindra said, not looking up from a treaty draft. Then she did look up, a playful gleam in her eye. Besides, the ice miners of Gelad V requested noble oversight. I am simply uniting a need with a man who tried to kill my husband. Husband. The word still sent a warm shock through him. Their wedding, a year later, was held in Hangar Bay GAMMA 7. Penny, now a fiercely dedicated 11-year-old, was flower girl. She performed her duty with the solemn precision of a starship pilot executing a gravity slingshot. Tovin's best man speech was a masterpiece of affectionate roasting. Clara and Marcus cried. The Kelveri aristocracy attended in stunned, polite silence, which Valindra and Brennan considered a roaring success. Later, on the observation deck, the starfield a silent celebration, Brennan felt a familiar, older pang. Clara wants to visit, he said. She knows I'm alive. The medical network isn't as private as I'd hoped. Valindra leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture of trust that never ceased to amaze him. And what do you want? He was silent for a long time, watching a binary star system slowly dance. I want to stop running, he said finally, the confession wrenching itself free. I thought I was protecting them. I was just protecting myself from their grief. From having to say goodbye. I was a coward. She turned, cupping his face in her hands, her touch as grounding as a planetary core. Then stop. Invite them. Here. Whatever comes next, you do not face it alone. That is my decree. 3 months later, Brennan waited in the same hangar, Valindra's hand a steady anchor in his. The transport docked, its ramp descending with a hiss of equalizing pressure. And then she was there. Clara, older, her hair streaked with gray he hadn't given her, her eyes wide and filled with a tempest of emotions. She stopped. The world stopped. Then she was running, and he was running, and they collided in the middle of the bay, a tangle of arms and sobs and years of unsaid words. "You idiot," she wept, pounding his back with fists that held no strength. "You stupid, self-sacrificing idiot. We mourned you. Penny asked for you every night." "I know," he choked, holding her tighter than he ever had. "Clara, I am so sorry. I was wrong." She pulled back, her hands on his shoulders, searching his face. "They said you're cured. Is it true?" "It's true. I'm not going anywhere." She hugged him again, crying anew, and then the rest of his world descended upon him. Marcus with a handshake that bordered on violence, teenage Tom and Sasha with shy, awkward hugs. And Penny. She stood before him, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. She was taller. He had missed a year. "Uncle Brennan?" she asked, her voice small. "Yes, Penny girl, it's really me. You promised to teach me to fly." The old promise, the one that had broken his heart to make, hung between them. "I did. You left. I know. And I am more sorry for that than for anything in my life." She studied him with the devastating honesty of children. "Are you going to leave again?" He looked over her head at Valindra, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. He looked at his sister, at his family, whole and here. He knelt, bringing himself to her level. "No, Penny," he said, his voice thick with a conviction that forged itself in that moment. "I am never leaving again. I'm staying right here. And if you'll still let me, I would very much like to teach you to fly." A slow, radiant smile broke across her face, erasing the shadow of his absence. She thrust the rabbit forward. "This is Mr. Hopsworth. He guarded me when you were gone." Brennan shook the rabbit's paw with grave sincerity. "Thank you for your service, Mr. Hopsworth. I'll take over watch now. Blank, _ blank." Their daughter was born 2 years later. They named her Esperance, an old Earth word for hope. She had her mother's violet skin and her father's stubborn chin. Penny, now a fiercely proud teen, appointed herself chief of security and head of funny faces for the infant heir. One evening, as Brennan rocked a fussy Esperance, Penny appeared in the doorway, her expression serious. "Uncle Brennan," she said, "what if something bad happens again? What if you have to be brave and go away?" He heard the old fear, the one he had planted. He held his daughter close, her small weight a profound anchor. "Listen to me, Penny," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I thought being brave meant facing scary things alone. I was wrong. Being brave means facing them with the people you love. It means holding on, not letting go. Whatever happens, we face it together. That's the promise I should have made all along." Penny considered this, then nodded, a weight seeming to lift from her small shoulders. "Okay. But if you try to be brave alone again, I'll tell Aunt Valindra. And she'll make you reorganize the entire tool crib by fastener size." Brennan laughed, and Esperance cooed, and the sound was the sweetest music in the galaxy. From her office, Monitoring the security feed with a soft smile, Empress Valindra heard it all. She looked at the stars beyond. Her viewport, no longer just points of strategic interest or navigational hazards, but witnesses to a quiet, human miracle. Historians would later call her reign the Pax Valindra, an era of unprecedented peace and cultural exchange. They would note her political acumen, her military reforms, her treaty with the Sarantines. But in the private journals, in the stories passed among mechanics and kitchen staff and gardeners, a different history was kept. They spoke of the empress who would walk the lower decks, who knew the engineers by name, who once spent an entire afternoon in a hangar helping a young human girl learn a pre-flight checklist. They spoke of her laughter, which became more common than her fury. They spoke of the human at her side, who never called her Eminence in private, and who still fixed things with his own hands. The story that began with a threat in a hangar bay did not end with a throne or a treaty. It deepened. It grew roots. It became a story not of empires, but of a family, forged not by blood or decree, but by choice, by truth, and by the courageous, ordinary act of looking at another soul, and seeing, truly seeing, the person waiting within.